Priorities. You have them. I have them. We all have priorities in life, a list of things we as people need to do first. And priorities change as you get older and as your life circumstance change, as you add people, as you take out people. Priorities also change over a very long time period. And they change based on your gender as well, because of how you feel your role is. And with that, it also changes based on where you feel your role is within that certain time period, as well as what's historically going on around you. So today, we're going to be discussing priorities, not just now, not just in the past, but way in the past, and how it's changed in each different interval. My name is Katrina Overfield. I'm the co-host of the show. This is Tim Goldish, our fellow co-host.
Welcome.
And this is the Glass Floor Podcast.
It is.
This is a podcast that is very gender neutral, where we try to talk about different topics. And basically, as the title insinuates, we try to look at the glass floor view. Those men who are underneath the glass floor the women walk on. And with that, we are sponsored by NCFM, the National Coalition for Men, which was sponsored in 1977 and is a diverse, inclusive, and nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to fighting against discrimination against boys, men, and the women and families that love them. We'll get into talking about priorities.
Priorities. Oh, this is kind of what takes us from the 1950s about up until the present. And it's changed a lot, hasn't it? You know, times have changed. And that seems like a pretty good summary of men's priorities in the 1950s and women's priorities versus now, where each other is nowhere on the list anymore.
Realistically,
right?
Nor family,
nor home, nor children, nor parenting. No. So, what I also want to talk about is what was woman's and what was man's top priority in the far distant past. See, everything changed in the 1950s. We talk about the 1950s as if it were the benchmark of the traditional. But actually, conditions for men and women, for humans, for especially white middle-class Americans, in the midpoint of the 20th century, was totally unlike anything that I'd seen historically. Mm-hmm. It was more prosperous. It was, you had telephones, you had automobiles that anybody could afford. You had superhighways, you had television. So
you had color TV for the first time.
That's right. Before that, however, life for most was brutal. Mm-hmm. Okay? It was really more a struggle just to survive. I'm going to offer a quote here by Jordan Peterson, who many of you know who that is. And whether he's famous or notorious, I don't know. It depends on you. But I think he's great. So, quote, things really started to shift in about 1895. Before 1895, the typical person in the West lived on less than $1 a day, which is about 2/3 of the UN cutoff for abject poverty by today's standards. And so what happened through most of history of the world is that men and women struggled mightily together, sometimes at each other's throats, but mostly cooperatively, to keep the wolf at the door and the tyrant at bay. Life was very, 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 very difficult. Indeed, for most, it was a struggle just to survive. And as most of us know, survival meant just trying to make it to age 30. And you probably wouldn't even make that. So that's
In
how,
very few lucky cases you could, yeah.
in lucky few cases, the human lifespan was the same as it is now. And so there have been those who lived to be 80 or 90 back even in the 15th century, but they were pretty rare.
And to the point about the dollar, some people are going to point out the value is different back then. Okay, let's say you have $1. Bread is 20 cents. Gasoline is 10 if you have a car. If you don't have a car,
Yeah.
still the bus pass might be 5 cents a day, 2 cents a day. Work 7 days a week. 5 days a week, I guess. Let's be nice. Let's assume they work 5 days a week.
Yeah.
So 2 cents times 5. Then you also have, milk, butter,
Yeah.
eggs, maybe.
So
Some kind of meat that's at least 30 cents.
desperate.
That dollar goes away real quick.
What deprivation and just a struggle to get enough calories to stay alive.
And then split amongst your family members.
Yeah. My point as a gender equalist is that throughout history, woman's top priority, being smaller and weaker and the bearer and the nurturer of the young, her top priority was in securing a relatively soft and safe environment for herself and for her children. I believe that woman accepted a deal that included the glass ceiling because it also included the glass floor. And that the glass floor has always provided women with some measure of insulation between women and the dark side of the world and human nature, plus most of life on Earth's most deeply brutal, hard, harsh, filthy, hazardous, and corrupting realities. So, woman took a deal whereby she got some measure of protection. And I will argue that within the brutal past, that protection was about the most valuable commodity anyone could have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was expensive.
Yeah. And it wasn't just for those who were poor, also for the wealthier. Just to go back to time Queen Victoria, she was rich. She was royal.
Yeah.
And she also was forced to secure her position through the creation of an heir.
Exactly. And also she paid people to protect her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because
she had royal guards and she had her own staff around her all the time.
Right. Every potentate surrounds him or herself with some insulation to protect them. And they pay a pretty penny for it. If you don't have money, then what do you got? So what I think happened in the past is that woman tended to dress herself up in a little Bo Peep outfit, okay? And she had a hanky in one hand and smelling salts in the other. And she basically worked a persona, a look, a manner of being that was maximally incongruent with being sent off to war or hard hazardous labor or imprisonment or homelessness. Okay. She worked the power she had in compensation for the power she lacked, just like men. And the power she worked were all about securing safety in a brutal world. And I want to quickly emphasize for all those out there who are going, well, it was just men that made it brutal. No, it was extreme poverty. It was extreme poverty. It was extreme need and fear and superstition. And it was a world desperate. I mean, you had only to step on some sharp thing and get an infection.
You would die.
And you would die.
It was a fight for resources and a fight of wealth to balance a large wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point as well of saying brutal work as well, being
Brutal
Honestly,
work.
it was
Brutal
brutal
work.
work
My
for men,
God.
for women, and for children.
Yeah.
There were a lot of families, and this goes to the security point. To be financially secure, would have 10 kids. They'd all be working, their jobs being maybe pullers on mine or something. Fathers will be diggers, and wives be working at the fabric companies.
Yeah.
With the dangerous.
I can easily see why
machines.
women would seek a wealthy man
Mhm.
that could protect her. So she didn't have to work in the garment factory, right? So that her kids would be taken care of. Woman top prioritized a relatively soft and safe environment for herself and her children. It cost her, as any commodity, any valuable commodity, you don't get it for nothing. And woman was equal partner in the human system. She exerted an equal overall force of influence, and she did it through her own feminine channels of how she worked it. And her top priority was safety. And in a world that was made brutal by scarcity and just everything being dangerous, travel was dangerous. You know, everything was dangerous then.
Yeah. And there were often wars. And honestly, now that we're going about this, I'm thinking of one person in particular who's a very perfect example of this, which is Cleopatra. If you think back, the way she used her beauty and her seduction to gain a friendship with Rome, basically, for a while at least.
Yeah, these political alliances. Yeah, of course she did.
And she did that all through her own like feminine power just to gain their alliance to keep herself safe. Obviously that didn't work out in the end for many reasons, but it for a good while it did work out. And they helped her, I believe, in some ways with overthrowing her brother and putting her there.
So. Yeah. Back then, paternity was only understood matrilineally. The father was not really understood to be a blood heir. So a man would marry his sister in order to then become a member of the family, so that he would then have rights to inheritance, to grant inheritance to his children, because they become his children. And so I don't know, also no expert on Cleopatra, but she married her brother more than once, I think.
They were, my understanding is they were arranged to be married together and hold the throne together.
Yeah.
He actually tried to get rid of her. She managed to fight back, and I think that's when they got back together, and then she planned throwing him out. And that's when the Roman alliance started coming in.
Yeah. But again, brutal. All these Roman emperors, there's a great story about one of them. They had to drag him kicking and screaming to become Roman emperor. He was just the next in line. He didn't want it because all 5 of the previous 5 had died, within months or something of becoming the emperor.
And Cleopatra's brother died, I think, at a very young age. He was still a teenager, I believe.
Oh, I don't know. It was the Battle of Actium. I remember that. I remember little bits of my history. But anyway, yeah. But my understanding is they had to marry her because she was the one who was regarded royalty by lineage. And the only way for a male to get in on that was to marry into it. That's my understanding. The sexes engaged in this gender deal, the deal, as I call it, because out of the deal, each sex got what it wanted most. And I would say that what man, for his particular brand of self-sacrifice, what he got, what he earned, was the lion's share of the respect. And for her particular brand of self-sacrifice, what woman earned was the lion's share of the love, which again included that glass floor, protecting her from sinking to the extreme bottom of things. She got an extra measure of charity and leniency, and these were the best things to have at the time. Meanwhile, man, his top priority was to be respected. It was about status. It was about wealth. It was about being, and that he used that to draw attraction of women.
Showing that he could provide.
Yeah,
Something.
yeah. So he wanted to be known far and wide for his toughness, strength, and courage, that sort of thing. Intellect, competence, prestige, all things along the respect axis, where women were more invested in beauty, grace, goodness, home, family, parenting, basically things along the love axis.
It is true, and I feel like it's generally stayed that way for most of the time. It's just the formats of which it comes in has changed.
Uh-huh.
Because if we go back to the 1950s versus the now, you'll see that, you know, it says marriage, children, home, family, financial security, community involvement.
Yeah.
So in the 50s, you're able to afford going to your church. You're able to, you know, take care of your family. Financial stability looked a little different. You look at Queen Elizabeth's time, you look at a time medieval people, it was affording bread.
Right.
And affording, you know, like a little hut or something.
Yeah, something
But
where,
yeah, somebody knows how to wield a weapon. Now in the 50s, it became, you know, a guy who has at least a house, car, a job.
Yeah.
So you can afford some groceries.
Yeah.
And I would say the respect part has changed a bit too, because the respect in the 50s was more within your business, your company. You know, I'm a homeowner, this is the respect of my house, the respect of my community. And back then, when they were doing trades, it was sort of respect, not just of your character, but of the goods you had, of the thought process you had, of the way you survived. Different empires admired each other for the way they worked and the goods that they had.
Uh-huh.
They had something worth trading and something worth respecting.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of changed what that type of what to respect is.
Yeah. Love and respect, related concepts, they overlap somewhat. It's hard to completely distinguish them. So when I look at love and respect and that dynamic, I look at the qualities that beget them. Like, so that's how love and respect really distinguish each other. Because what inspires love? You know, it's things like innocence and sweetness and agreeableness, nurturance, and also being non-threatening. And what inspires respect? Well, it's things like skills, competence, courage, expertise, being independent, being not complaining, right? They're very different. What begets these two things, and that really shows how love and respect are really quite different things.
And with love too, it's more forgiveness. Respect is more ruthless.
Yes.
It's not as forgiving. It's sort of this like you respect me or else kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or brutal. But I would say it's, as I mentioned, it just sort of changed over time. That seems to be the thing that you see. And also just because the requirements of the times have changed. In Cleopatra's time, it was different empires fighting, and it was about what's the best alliances.
Yeah.
And you sort of still saw that in like the European periods and Victoria and all that, but it was about who could start, you know, creating more stuff, who could get into the future quicker. It was about, you know, how to keep the lineage strong. You wanted to have alliances, but you also wanted to make sure you kept it within. And it was about, you know, sort of trying to figure out society as well, who had the best society. I mean, Victoria, on top of the fact that she helped with the creation of some of the first steam trains and other stuff, she also was a huge fashion icon. She sort of, oddly in a way, was equally respected, and yet the social matriarchal center.
I know. Well, I'm not suggesting that men we're not loved at all, or that women were not respected at all. It's always a matter of degree. But also a tricky thing about it is, you can see how like a woman walk in the room, and the men would remove their hats, and they would bow, and they would give her a seat, and they would kiss her hand, and all that stuff. But that stuff, in my judgment, that's adoration. That's not really respect.
Yeah.
See, because if some man crashes through the door saying, "There's a crack in the dam," and all of a sudden this woman who stole focus moments before, she disappears now. We have no use for beauty, grace, goodness, home, family, parenting. Now we need intellect, competence, prestige, toughness, and courage. We need somebody to take action. We need so that's why a lot of these deferences that can be mistaken for respect are not really. They're more like adoration.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, in the mirror opposite, we believe that women fall in love with men. But I believe that women have always fallen more into a kind of eroticized and romanticized respect for the man,
Mm-hmm.
a man they look up to, a man that impresses them. So on both sides, one needs to do some thinking to get a bit rigorous about what is love and what is respect, and how they're not the same.
They look for what they're lacking in another, and they sort of find that completion. It's
yes, exactly.
The man might be lacking a little bit of love, but he still understands it. And there's certain aspects of love, and she might be missing certain aspects of respect that he has.
That's right.
But she has her own versions of respect.
Yeah.
So that seems to be at least what it has been usually. Obviously, we have the now, and it's been looking a little different recently.
Yeah, it sure has.
As we've been getting sort of into this day and age where, and this is no judgment on technology or on the times changing, because the changes are great. They are helping us in the future in many ways, and there are some ways that they've been applied amazingly, and they should be. But also in some ways, because there's this sense of security now that's created artificially, people are looking for that connection less, and people are becoming more focused on personalized things instead of each other or their families. It's become
actually it was in this era. If I can find a little thing. I don't know where it is. Where's my little pointer? My pointer. Okay, thank you. I gotta have my pointer. Yeah, it was in this era here where protection lost its value.
Yeah.
There was still an inertia here, but really this was the era when you had unions. You had in the world of men, you had unions, you had vastly improved safety, worker morale. The environment was much cleaner, safer, less arduous, as machine power took the place of muscle power, and women's strength disadvantage became not very important. And meanwhile, in the world of women, you had reproductive technology and domestic technology, and the growth of the service industry that kind of turned women's traditional role here into more like a part-time job. And so those two changes, that's what caused women to want to enter the world of men en masse, because 100 years ago, the world of men was no picnic. Women would not, I don't think women would want to enter the world of men back then. And you read some Dickens and see what the world of men was like. Women didn't want in on that. It all changed in the 1950s, and then in the 1960s, it exploded into action.
Yeah.
And
they started realizing that men had credit cards, men had their own houses that they would get, and they weren't able to do those things.
Right.
And yet they were being at the house, they were going to the mall, taking care of the kids, and they were like, why should I have this?
So the world of men became enviable. Whereas back when they were working in the factories, it wasn't so enviable. Working in the coal mines, not so enviable. But yeah, so that's just all changed. And so now we have this. And yeah, with every change, something's lost and something's gained, and there have been a lot of gains in the new outlooks and the tolerances for people that historically were marginalized or hung by the neck or killed or burned at the stake. Now we have a widespread compassion is spread much wider, and but unfortunately, at the current point, the gender relations are terrible.
Mhm.
That's been the biggest cost that I see in the present. It's just terrible, to the point where birth rates are plummeting everywhere all over the world. And while you can look at that as a good thing, that we're reducing population, but I don't think people really understand how exponential this drop off in population is set to be, and how potentially catastrophic it is. And also, I mean, we're just missing the romance. There was a time when men and women fell in love, and it was like the most glorious thing in their lives. It was just such a beautiful thing, and I could go on and on. I like some. There's a Camille Paglia quote that I think is pretty cool. That men grow up dealing with women's bullshit, and women grow up dealing with men's bullshit. And there's a lot of talk now of men and women that don't grow up anymore. So I mean that's a judgment, but that's a common judgment these days, that the prolonged adolescence. So that's about it for me.
I mean, I guess I'll end to this point. I think a big part of it is we've switched from outside security being a need to, well, not being a need. Well, it was a need, but outside security being the concern to now more people dealing with their insecurities. I mean, we frankly live in a city, and I think we said before, we're in Chicago, that is not the most safe, and we know it because that's all the news talks about. WGN, if you're hearing this, no offense, it would not kill you to make the crime thing just a little shorter. Because it gets depressing after a while.
Yeah.
We know we all don't live in a great city. But to point, it's not great outside, but people are so fearful that the next person is going to be the person that attacks you, does what happens on the train, or they can't be trusted. They're thinking all the time, thinking,
Yeah.
like, oh my god,
Yeah.
what if this leads to this?
Right.
What if
Whereas back here, people felt safe, whether it was true or not. They felt pretty safe.
It was like you knew what was going to be judged and what wasn't. You knew who was safe and who wasn't. And now you've got no clue. The sense of community's been lost. Everybody's sort of strangers. And it's funny because as much as social media has brought us together, it's also brought us way far apart.
Yeah.
Because now we're also arguing on opinions, and people think, oh, it's dangerous if this person's of this opinion. And it's just all over the place. And they're seeing these videos that tell them, oh, guys do this, women do that. And they're just like, well, I don't want to be in that situation. And so we've gotten to this point where our own mental insecurities sort of create this divide. But that's insecurity is sort of fueled by things we're reading and things we're seeing and things that are reported and emphasized on purpose.
Oh God!
It seems in many ways.
You don't dare watch the news.
Yeah.
No, it's so depressing and so. Ugh.
It really is. And they sort of put false narratives about things. I'm not saying women can't work. We should work. I work. But you have to learn where your limits are. And they're making test limits and going above it to a point that it's sort of stressing you out. For both male and female. In a lot of ways. Yeah, okay. More health and fitness is happening. More work-life balance is happening. But how are we using that work-life balance? Is the real question. Have we been using it truly well?
Yeah.
Or have we lost what it really should be used for? So there's a lot of different things to be said.
Yeah.
But that would be my last point to it.
Why don't you take us on?
Well, with that, thank you so much for joining this episode. We hope you found this interesting. We'll be having a lot more topics coming up, and as the new year comes, we'll definitely have a lot more episodes. So thank you for watching. This has been The Glass Floor. I'm Katrina Overfield.
I'm Tim Goldish. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and
comment.
And comment.
Down below.
Thank you.
Thank you.